do a lot of... Okay. Hey everyone, it's DJ from the Bookish Den again, and we are back with another video. And today we are going to be talking about some of my favorite books that you may or may not have ever heard of before. Now, I am a reader at heart. It is my entire just soul. And I read everything. I read all sorts of different genres. I read fan fiction. I read graphic novels. I read comic books. You name it, I probably have some of it in my collection, with very, very few exceptions. Sorry, you're not going to find 50 Shades of Grey here, you guys. However, I have some really great books that I wanted to share with you guys and maybe get you to branch out of your normal reading genres. I try to bounce around. It keeps reading interesting for me. And here, I think I have something for everyone. Some might be completely out of your comfort zone. Some might be a little bit closer to home, but hopefully you'll find something new. I even have some children's books here. So if you're just specifically looking for some cool reads for your kids, I think I've got some things that will really entice you. So stay tuned and let's get into it. All right, so let's get into these books that you may or may not have ever heard of before. We are actually going to start, I think we're going to start with devotionals. I have 3 devotionals that I wanted to share with you guys. First is Jesus, Coffee, and Prayer by Minister Nikita Davis. Now, I'm a little bit biased on this. Nikita is actually my publisher for the book that I co-authored, which is The Queen Experience. You can get a link for that down below. It launches August 4th. But I met her a year ago, I think. My sister took me out for donuts for my birthday. And Nikita was actually, she had just launched her devotional and was selling her books right there in the donut shop. She was actually buying donuts for anyone who bought her book. My sister and I picked this up. We talked to Nikita and her husband for quite a long time. Their joy rubs off on you. They're almost addicting to talk to. And so we stood there for quite a while and spoke with them. I couldn't help but want to buy her book and support her. I love that she was doing her hustle. She had both of her kids out with her. It was just really, really amazing. And her book is great. I love the layout of this because it has a devotional. It has scripture, it has prayer, it even has some journaling in here, but this whole book centers around having an attitude of gratitude, which if you are sort of a melancholy person like I am, sometimes that can be a difficult thing, especially in the mornings. I'm far from being a morning person, so this was really encouraging to read, and so I highly, highly recommend it, and not just because she's my publisher, but I genuinely like the book. Another one is called Daughter, Immerse Yourself in Friendship and Intimacy with God by Taya Katani. I just adore this book. I adore Taya, period. She is local to me. She opened up a little shop downtown called Truth and Table, and she sells all kinds of really great Christian goods there. A lot of them are, if not all of them, are independently owned businesses. Lots of things from Haiti and third world countries, providing jobs for those people, fair trade jobs. It's just one of those shops you go into, you want to buy everything because you want to support everything. With that being said, when she opened, I went in to meet her because at the time I was teaching marketing and things to small business owners, so I try to kind of go out and meet new business owners in town. And I met her, and again, she's an addicting person. Her love for Jesus is just absolutely beautiful. And she wrote this book. It's a 54-week devotional, and this is a really cool devotional as well. It comes with a devotion, of course. It has lots of scripture for you to look up, but then it has so much for you to write throughout the week, things that the Lord gives you, words, songs, dreams, things that you're praying about. It becomes really more like a journal than just a devotional. And the writing is just beautiful. It's really intimate, and it touches on some pretty hardcore stuff. So get this. It's great. Now I have kind of a children's devotional that we just really, really love. And this is I Am 40 Reasons to Trust God. And what this is it goes through all the names of God. It's just, it is really, really great. Like Jehovah Rohi, the Lord is my shepherd. So it goes through a story explaining how God is our shepherd. We have just Jehovah, which means I am, and how that came to be, and why do we call God I am. We have, and not all of these are Old Testament. You have Abba, Father. Why do we call God Father? Resurrection and the life. I mean, it's just 40 names of God, devotions with prayers, and it's just so good. And I think I actually got this at Hobby Lobby. I'll link down to it below. This is just a really great one to go through with the kids. That's it for devotionals, and now I'm going to show you, I think we're going to do some children's books. So this is The Story Night. Even dragons love a good story. I believe it was a husband and wife team that wrote and illustrated this. The illustrations are fantastic, but this is about a little mouse named Leo who is supposed to be a knight, but he doesn't really want to be a knight. He just wants to read, and then he has to go on this quest to slay a dragon. It's just really cute. It is done in rhyme. I feel like more people need exposure to this book because it is just that great. It's really adorable. We get a kick out of reading this every time. And if you are a bookworm, you're going to love this book even more. So definitely check that one out. I talk about this book all the time to pretty much anyone who will listen. This is Born from the Heart by Berta Serrano. I probably butchered that. But this is unlike any story that I have read. And again, it's one I feel like more families should have in their collection. I got this at a thrift store, and I got it simply because of the illustrations. The illustrations are absolutely beautiful. I love just that hand-drawn, quirky look. But this is a book about babies. It is about a couple who decides that they want a child, so they go to the doctor, and the doctor gives them a recipe of love and patience and happiness, and so they create the baby, and next thing you know, now she's going to have a baby. And through the whole story, her heart keeps growing bigger and bigger, but then it's time for the baby to come. But it's not the way that you think. And here's spoiler alert for the story. So if you don't want to know, just skip ahead a few minutes. What happens is she gets in an airplane, she flies overseas, and she goes to an orphanage. And the moment that she sees her little child run to her, her heart bursts. And it's almost like that she is given birth, but instead of normal birth, her and her husband had adopted a baby. So this is actually an adoption story, but you don't really know that until towards the end. And I love this. I could see this being a great gotcha present for, younger kids, or, gifts to read to children who have been adopted, or just adoptive parents. It's just a beautiful story, and check this out. I've never heard of it before, and I think I had bought it, and it took like months before we actually sat down and read it, and by the end, I was in tears. So that's why I am offering it to you, because I think that you should cry with me. It's a beautiful story. Don't miss out. Now we're gonna talk about some of my seriously just favorite of all time books, and you may or may not have ever heard of these. For those of you who don't know, my kids and I have been studying Japan, the culture, and the language for about 2 years. We've slacked off on the language quite a bit. We need to get back into that. We constantly read about the culture and the country. We have tons and tons of books, and we watch a lot of YouTube videos. There are a lot of expats who live in Japan and are doing a lot of vlogs and documentaries and things like that about their time there. So we watch a lot of that too. With that being said, we have discovered some lifelong favorite books, and I'm going to share them with you. First is Sadako and the Thousand Paper Cranes. I'm pretty sure this is kind of like a classic book, so you may have heard of it. I had heard of it, but had never read it. It is actually considered the sequel to Hiroshima, even though they're by two different authors. I do recommend that you read Hiroshima first. This one will make you cry. This one will make you cry. They're both incredibly sad. They are about the bombing of Hiroshima. It actually takes place quite a few years after the bomb happens. Sadako is a little girl who actually ends up with she's pretty much got radiation poisoning from the residual exposure, and while she's in the hospital, she believes that if she makes 1,000 paper cranes, then the gods will heal her. And it's really good. It took us 3 days to get through this because I just wasn't emotionally prepared for this. I had no idea this was the direction the book was going to go into, and I'm glad that I read it because now it is seriously one of my favorite books of all time. Keeping with a World War II theme, this is a story I'm mad that I never even heard about in school, and I don't understand why. This book is called Passage to Freedom, the Sugihara story. This is a book on Chiune Sugihara. If you don't know him, he is almost like a Japanese Schindler. He pretty much did almost the same thing of helping refugees kind of hide away from the Nazis. And it had me in tears. I just hadn't realized, like, how did I miss this story? World War II was one of my favorite topics to read about when I was in school, and I don't ever remember coming across this particular one, and I think it's an incredibly important one to share with your children. It is written by Ken Mochizuki, and in the back there's actually an afterword by Hiroki Sugihara, who is the son here, and this is kind of written by his point of view of what his father was doing at the time. Very emotional, but it's really important. And I think that I saw in here that there's actually on the inside, it has a link to a teacher's guide. So if you're wanting to do kind of a full-on unit study on this, would probably be a good route to go. My power just flickered. So that is Passage to Freedom. Keeping with the Japanese trend, if you've read one of my recent blog posts about our favorite Japanese books, then you know that this is an author that I adore and love and recommend to everybody. That is Alan Say. All of his books. Seriously, all his books. If you've been in the homeschool world for a while, then you probably know him from Grandfather's Journey, which is a great book. I love that, but that is not my favorite. Mishibai Man is my favorite book from him. It's just the sweetest story, and it Kamishibai Man was someone who had this like little cart and would go around telling stories. He was pretty much a storyteller, and then in the drawer underneath he would have candy to pass out to the children. So it's about a man who had done that for most of his life, but then the world around him became really modern, and he felt that there was no need for his storytelling anymore, but how wrong he was. And I'm not going to spoil the ending on this one, but at the end of this, after reading this to the kids, I was like, I love it. I love this story. Alan Say he is the best storyteller. He is one of my favorites for sure. His illustrations are beautiful. If I had to pick a second one, it would be Erica-san. This one made me cry for a completely other reason. It's not a sad story. It's actually a really great story. It is about a little girl who is obsessed with Japan, and when she graduates, she moves to Japan. And it talks about her journey there, and then she ends up meeting a boy, and they fall in love. That's not the whole story, but that's the gist of it. And the reason why this makes me so emotional is I have a little girl who's very obsessed with Japan and who has announced plenty of times that when she graduates, she is moving to Tokyo. So to read this was quite an emotional journey. I didn't know what to expect. Erica-san, I assumed was going to be a teacher since it had san in the name, that it had to deal with being a teacher. I wasn't prepared for this, but I'm still going to recommend it to you because it's a great story. Kamishibai Man is still my favorite from Alan Say, but I love all of his books. I am currently trying to collect all of them. I think I have 6 but he's written a lot, and he's illustrated a lot, and I'm trying to collect them all. If you're wanting a really good look into Japanese culture, Say's the way to go. So we're going to do the nonfiction first. This is The Stranger in the Woods, the extraordinary story of the last true hermit. Now, I won this. This was an ARC that I got a couple years ago, and I think I got it from Goodreads. And one day I thought it was something completely different. Even glancing in the back, I still didn't realize that this was a true story. So I went into this thinking that it was fiction, and it's definitely not. This is a story about Christopher Knight, who was a man who pretty much walked into the woods and didn't come out for 25 years. He had no contact with any humans for 25 years. He would petty theft his way to get food here and there, but he pretty much kept himself hidden until he was arrested for, I think it was a children's camp that he had stole some food from. And this is the story from the journalist that pretty much bugged the mess out of him to try to understand, how does someone just walk into the woods one day and decide that they want nothing to do with society. Very interesting. Very not a book I would have chosen for myself, but so glad that I did, because I read this in 2 days. I could not put it down. It was very interesting to just get in that kind of that human mindset that's completely opposite of something that I would do. So if you're looking just for something super unique, check this out. Get the ebook or find it at your library. I'm really glad that I picked this up and that this was sent to me, because it was I wouldn't say fun, it was just really interesting, very intriguing, and very different. Now, the next ebook that I have, this is actually going to be on my iPad, but I listened to the audiobook, and this is Crystal Payne's Money Making Mom. Again, you may know who Crystal Payne is. She is the money saving mom, but this is her book, Money Making Mom, and I love this. I have followed Crystal for years and years and years. She was one of the first bloggers that I ever followed, but she really gets deep into her story and her testimony here. It was the very first business book I ever read, and it really helped to motivate me to pursue my dreams, even when they seem incredibly hard. And if I'm pretty sure she's the one who reads it too, which if you're using the audio, if you're listening to the audiobook, it makes a huge difference. If you are looking to grow a side hustle, start a business, anything like that, I highly recommend starting with that book. It's incredibly encouraging, especially being a mom and listening to her testimony and where she came from. It'll open up some doors. It'll close some self-doubt as well, because she went through some stuff, some really serious stuff. If she can do it, we can do it. So yeah, that's my little soapbox for that. Now, let's get into the fiction that I have. I have contemporary, fantasy, sci-fi, and even some fairy tale retellings. So let's actually start there. This is The Wrath in the Dawn by Renee Ahdieh. This is seriously one of my favorite books of all time. And can we talk about that cover? It's so pretty. And I mean, even the naked book is absolutely gorgeous. This is a retelling of Arabian Nights, and it's just really well done. This is the kind of book where when you read it, you can smell things, you can hear the sounds, you can really immerse yourself into this world. Ahdieh does a amazing job at world building, and I thoroughly enjoyed this. I bought this the day that it came out because of YouTube and BookTube. I'm so glad that I did. It got me hooked on fairy tale retellings, which are now one of my favorite genres to read. There's also the second one, which is The Rose and the Dagger, and I have not read this yet. I recently got this at a thrift store, and I told myself that I was going to read it, and I haven't done it yet, and I really need to do it because I love her writing. Her storytelling is wonderful, and it does leave on a cliffhanger here. If you don't know the story of Arabian Nights or 1001 Nights, what happens is there is a prince or a king who takes a bride every night, but she is dead by morning. The main character is chosen to become queen, and she wants to figure out what is going on that is making this king take a new bride and kill her every single day. It sounds really dark, but it's really not. It's great. If you like YA fantasy, if you like fairy tale retellings, you need to check this one out. Speaking of retellings, this is not really a fairy tale retelling, but this is Black Hearts. This is a retelling, or a it's not actually even a retelling. This is supposed to be the origin story of Blackbeard. It was good, you guys. If you're looking for some diversity in your life, this is great. Again, this was a book I just bought on a whim. I heard good things about it, and I'm pretty happy with it. The ending is sad. It's another cliffhanger. I don't remember what the second book is called, but if I pull it up, I'll make sure to put it in the description below. But this was a fun read, and I think I read this in 2 days. I have an independent author whom I am obsessed with, and this is, and I'm probably going to butcher her name, Intisar Kanani. Yeah, that's as close as I can probably get. But she's the author of the Sunbolt Chronicles, and I got this for a review years ago, and I don't know why more people are not reading this series. It's so good. It's very similar as far as the location as The Wrath and the Dawn. It is a Middle Eastern story, and Kanani can truly immerse yourself into that world. It's, again, one of those books where you can smell and hear and just really be in the world in this book. This is about a girl with magical powers who finds out that there's a royal family that's going to get assassinated, and she goes to try to help them. Unfortunately, she gets captured, and so it deals with all of that. If you're into just adventure and magic, this is your story. It does kind of have a like Aladdin feel. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. And I hate to be like, oh, well, every Middle Eastern book feels like Aladdin. And not necessarily. There was just so much chase scenes, and just, it really reminded me of the scene in Aladdin where he is, being chased by the guards through the marketplace. There's a scene in the book that's very similar to that, and so I just loved it. The second book is great as well, so if you're wanting something a little more fantastical, check this out. Support an independent author. I love her work, and I can't wait to read more from her. I think we're out. Oh, no, we have one more fantasy, and this is The Bone Season by Samantha Shannon, and Samantha Shannon kind of got popular when this came out because I believe she was only 23, and this is a pretty massive book. This took me a couple of days to read. It probably would have taken me less, but there's a lot of language in this book. Samantha Shannon is British, or maybe she's not British. Yes, she is. She was born in West London. And so there's a lot of terminology in here from like old London. And she even has kind of a glossary in the back that I had to kind of keep going back and figuring it out. That's the only downside to this book, is there is a need for a glossary. However, it's so good. This is a huge series. I believe there's supposed to be 7 books in the series, and I want to say that they're on book like 4, maybe even 5. But this is a story about a girl named Paige who is a dream walker, which is like a clairvoyant. She, it's kind of hard to explain, but she can kind of get herself out of her body and walk around. That's very a loose translation of that. However, clairvoyance is very illegal in Scion, London. This is supposed to be set in the future, but it feels like it's set in the past. The characters are amazing. There is a point where Paige does get captured, but she gets kind of sold into slavery to an otherworldly race. So pretty much aliens. Sounds insane. Sounds like it wouldn't work. It works beautifully. If you take Avengers and mix it with Hunger Games, you pretty much have got the Bone season. That's the best way to describe it. I've only read book 1. I have book 2 and 3, and I'm going to start them because I really, really like this. On the back, it pretty much sums it up. It's a magical dystopic tale. That's it in a nutshell. So if that's your thing, I think you will really, really enjoy this. I don't know why I haven't heard more about it. Now, these next two are kind of popular in the YA world, but if you don't read a whole lot of YA, then you may not be familiar with these. And the first one is Forgive Me, Leonard Peacock by Matthew Quick. Matthew Quick is the one who wrote Silver Linings Playbook. I had never watched the movie, hadn't read the book. I don't even know why I bought this. It might have been sent to me. I'm not sure. I can't remember. But this is a YA contemporary. And whoo, this is really rough book. Let me just warn you. The language in this is slightly rough, but because of the content, I feel like it's almost necessary. On the back of it, it says, today is Leonard Peacock's birthday. It is also the day he will kill his former best friend and then himself with his grandfather's P-38 pistol. Maybe one day he'll believe that being different is okay, important even, but not today. And even reading that sentence just kind of gives me goosebumps because this was a very hard-hitting book. It dealt with some pretty rough issues. The book is written by Leonard Peacock's his point of view. So you are experiencing everything that he has experienced. You're in his head the whole time, and sometimes that is a very dark, scary, and absolutely heartbreaking place to be. If you are uncomfortable with or maybe it might be triggering for you dealing with things like suicide, depression, abuse, things like this, you might want to stay away from this book. But the themes in this book I think are extremely important because we are having so many teenagers dealing with this kind of stuff, and I almost feel like parents should read this to get in the head of some teenagers and what they could possibly be dealing with. This is hard, but it is a great book. It is raw, it is ugly, but reading isn't always about reading the beautiful things. Although those are important too. Sometimes we have to read the hard stuff because again, you're getting in the head of somebody and this stuff happens. This is very realistic. It's very real, and so that's why I'm recommending this one. Even though this, could be hit or miss for you depending on how you feel about some of the content, but I thoroughly enjoyed this book in the best way that you can enjoy something that is so kind of heartbreaking and raw. Now, next, I have Illuminae. This is about Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. I put this book off for so long. This was a super hyped book on BookTube a couple of years ago. Everyone talked about it. It's a New York Times bestseller, yada yada yada, but I never had any desire to pick it up. And then I found it at a thrift store and said, why not? This is a science fiction novel. Science fiction, I like it. It's just not something I gravitate towards. But this makes me want more. I love this, and I almost feel like that I won't find anything that can compete with this because of the format. Now, this, if you're a non-reader, I think you'll still like this, simply because of the way this is formatted. This is formatted in such a visually appealing way. This is told through documents, through text messages, through illustrations, all kinds of secret files. I mean, it's so cool. And this centers around a girl named Katie. who lives on a planet, I believe, with her father. And on this planet, it's a mining town, but they are doing it illegally. And so then comes in the big rival to pretty much blast them out of nowhere. They're unable to call for help. They kind of get onto some other ships and go away, but this rival mining company is coming after them to just completely wipe them all out. With that being said, there's an AI involved who becomes very well aware. And if you watch any sci-fi movie, an AI coming aware is the worst thing that could happen. And so Katie is like an expert hacker. She is incredibly smart and witty. And so she's just trying to figure out life at this point. Just there's so much that goes on in this, but this is the documents. These are pretty much the Illuminae files on this incident. So you are almost like reviewing it all, like what is truth, what is fiction, and it's pretty interesting. There are 2 other books in this series. Gemina, as you can see right there, is book 2. I need to really pick that up because I read this in a day and I just loved it. And so now I'm recommending it to you. But that is it, guys. This was a good amount of books that I think that you would really enjoy. Maybe you have not experienced or heard of before, but these are definitely some of my favorites and ones that I recommend over and over and over again. And I truly believe that you will enjoy. Now I want to hear from you and hear about your favorite books that maybe I haven't heard of before. Pop those down in the comments below, and before you leave, give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. Hit that subscribe button, and I will see you next time. Bye!